Hello everyone, it's Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and it's time for another Instant Deck Tech. So today we're heading to Standard to check out a really sweet, super budget Blue-Green Tides deck. This one recently took Aaron Mays to a third place finish at SCG Regionals, so congrats to Aaron on their finish with the deck. A quick reminder before we break it all down, if you enjoy this deck and want to see it made into videos, take a minute, click the like button, the subscribe button, leave a comment, anything you can do to support your deck, because whichever deck is most popular gets a shot at being made into videos next week. The namesake card is Rise from the Tides. So this is a really powerful effect if you can build around it. You get a 2/2 zombie for each instant or sorcery in your graveyard, so it's completely reasonable to get 10, 15 zombies with just one card if you build your deck in a way to really stack your graveyard. The problem with Rise from the Tides is it's a sorcery, so your opponent gets a chance to untap, they can languish away all your tokens, something along those lines. But the deck has a way of breaking that synergy. So what the deck wants to do is fill up its graveyard with instant or sorceries, but also get all the way up to 12 mana, because 12 mana is like the magical number for this deck. Once you get to 12 mana, you can cast a Rise from the Tides, but also cast a Part the Water Veil to take an extra turn, so your opponent doesn't get a chance to untap and languish or anything like that, so you make 10, 15 zombies, more than enough to kill your opponent in one attack. You cast a Part the Water Veil, take an extra turn, and immediately you can just attack and win the game with all the zombies you created from Rise from the Tides. So the cool thing about this deck is it gets to play a ton of ramp. So if you're getting up to 12 mana, you need the ramp. So you got Nissa's Pilgrimage, Explosive Vegetation, Nissa's Renewal, all cards that get lands out of your library, puts them directly on the battlefield. Nissa's Renewal can also gain you a bunch of life to help you stay alive. The sweet thing about these cards, and what I really like about this deck, is not only are these ramp cards that are getting you to that 12 mana you need for Part the Water Veil and Rise from the Tides in the same turn, but they're also sorceries, so they're counting towards Rise from the Tides, so there's some nice synergy there. Plus the deck has a ton of ways to just cycle through its library. So pieces of the puzzle, you get to dig 5 deep and take 2 instants or sorceries, helps you find your ramp spells, whatever else you might need. Fortune's Favor is kind of the newest take on Fact or Fiction, obviously way worse, but your opponent gets to divvy up your top 4 cards, some of them face down, some of them face up, and you get to choose one of the piles. Kind of an interesting puzzle card. And then Anticipate, just a 2 mana way to keep cycling through your deck and finding more action. And then the deck has a bunch of defense. Send to Sleep, it keeps 2 creatures from attacking for 2 turns, because you should almost always have Spell Mastery. So it's kind of a miniature Fog in some sense, except it's a Fog that lasts 2 turns. Good, very good against big creature decks. Not as good against decks that are going wide with a bunch of little things. Displacement Wave is kind of the opposite. Not very good against one big thing, but really good if your opponent's playing a bunch of tokens. You just bounce all that stuff back to your hand. And this deck, in the main deck, 0 non-land permanents, so it's a one-sided bounce effect. You're not going to bounce anything of your own, but you're bouncing all your opponent's stuff. Disperse bounces anything at instant speed, and a couple Clash of Wills to counter. And then a single Reclaim to get back whatever you need from your graveyard. If you happen to dump something with Fortune's Favor or with your pieces of the puzzle, you have a way to get it back. And then one of the sweet things about this deck is it is playing Coax from the Blind Eternities as a 2-of, and then it's playing a single Ulamog the Ceaseless Hunger in its sideboard. So Coax is a sorcery. It does what you want it to do, pumps up your Rise from the Tides, but it gives this deck a sweet sideboard plan where you can just search out your Ulamog, even in game 1 with your Coax, and win in a way that your opponent definitely wasn't expecting. As far as the mana base, 12 forests, 12 islands, about as simple as it gets. The rest of the sideboard, I already mentioned a single Ulamog. We get some counter spells, Overwhelming Denial, Summary Dismissal for Emeralds, and Negates to help force through your Rise from the Tides after boarding when your opponent is probably going to bring in their own counters potentially to fight against your Rise from the Tides and Part the Water Veils. Doctrine of Perfection, I love this card. I wish there was more in the sideboard of this deck. The deck has 0 creatures in the main deck, so any opponent in their right mind is going to sideboard out all their removal, or at least most of their removal. And if your opponent has no removal, and you're playing a deck with 37 spells that's really good at digging through and finding what it wants, if you enslam a Dasana Perfection, you're almost just guaranteed to flip it around and win the game. It's going to be so hard for an opponent to recover from that. So I'd almost like to see the full 4, or at least like 3 Dasana Perfections to be a legitimate sideboarding plan where you kind of transform from this creature-free deck into this Dasana Perfection beatdown plan. Another Send to Sleep and some Aerial Volleys to deal with Spell Quellers and other spirits. Another Reclaim and some Jotty Offshoots for aggro. Anyway, this is Blue-Green Tides in Standard. That's been our Instant Deck Tech for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon.